Thank you everybody for coming today. This is a historic event, and we're at a historic turning point in our history. We are reeling from Fukushima, as you know, and Eileen Miyako-Smith will talk about that in a minute. But we are also at a turning point with the technology. It's very fitting that we're here in Silicon Valley because at this moment in time, this year for the first time, all the financial journals, all the technical journals are telling us that solar energy, solar, wind, tidal, geothermal, ocean thermal, biofuels, increased efficiency, conservation, all these great technologies are now cheaper than nuclear power. And so all these years we've been arguing on the safety and the ecological impact, the health impacts of nuclear power, which have been driven home to us tragically once again by Fukushima. Now we know that we have the argument that if you have money to invest in energy, you will invest it in solar, because solar is the future, and not only the future, it's now the present. We have seen a rise in technological capability in solar panels that very much mirrors what we've seen with the computers and the internet. So this is a historic turning point. We also, unfortunately, have a simultaneous turning point at Fukushima. In all the years we've been fighting nuclear power, nobody ever talked about 3 simultaneous meltdowns, numerous explosions, a spent fuel pool on the brink of disaster. Fukushima is unprecedented. The radiation has come here. We're all breathing it, and it is having a devastating impact on the global ecology and our own personal health. So our mission here is to shut down the nuclear power industry before there is another Fukushima. Richard Nixon said there'd be 1,000 nuclear plants in the United States by the year 2000. There are 104. That's too many. We think we can shut them down, and we have to do it as quickly as possible. So we are here to celebrate a technological and economic turning point with the technology of energy. This is the dawn of a solar-tropian age, of an age when we really can get all our energy from renewables and from increased efficiency and conservation. Simultaneously, after 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and now Fukushima, we know how devastatingly important it is to shut down this industry before this happens again. So we are honored to have you all here today in Silicon Valley, where it all seems to be happening, and where the future is very much with us in the present. I'm honored to introduce to you Eileen Miyako-Smith. She's from the Green Action Network in Japan, and she's going to talk a bit about what has gone on there.
Hi, thank you. I'm Eileen Miyako-Smith. Green Action in Japan is based in Kyoto. We have 54 nuclear power plants in Japan. We all in Japan, all over Japan, worked extremely hard over the last 30 years to try to stop something like Fukushima. I don't think we could have tried harder. We tried really hard, but we knew that this day was coming. And that's because Japan is riddled with earthquake faults. If you mark them, you can't even see the islands. And the plants are right along on the same land. There are only 2 places in the world like this. If you look at the map of earthquake faults and nuclear power plants where they overlap, it's the California coast and Japan. And we're working right now not to prevent the second Fukushima. There are other locations in Japan that are very dangerous. Also, Fukushima is still ongoing. We're very worried about the spent fuel plants. Just last week, I was in Tokyo when it started shaking. And my friend, who's an activist in southern Japan, we turned on the TV, and we saw that the main area of the earthquake was Fukushima, and we just held our breath about those spent fuel plants, fuel pools. Anyway, right now we're trying to get the children of Fukushima evacuated. The Japanese government won't help us. We have to reach out to the rest of the world and let people know what's happening in Japan. Because right now, tens of thousands of children, and of course everybody, is living in Fukushima, not being able to be evacuated. The government refuses to evacuate. And people are living in areas that are much higher in contamination than what was required, mandatory evacuation to Chernobyl. And we battle with the government every week. It feels like a battle when we come back. We're exhausted, and it's ongoing. And just coming over here, just from yesterday, it just feels so wonderful. The air, the grass. Can you imagine everything green here and all the soil contaminated? And you have contamination from Fukushima, but it's just nothing from what we're facing right now in Japan. And it could happen here. Just imagine everything you look at is contaminated. You don't want that to happen. And so I hope we can work together to prevent those things from happening. Thank you. Vantage Point is our incredible underwriter. They're an amazing safe energy fund that funds all kinds of clean tech companies. This is Tom Campbell from the Guacamole Fund, who was one of the founders of MUSE and there for the very first concert. And then we have Kitaro, Jonathan Wilson, John Hall, David Crosby, Jackson Browne, Bonnie Raitt, Graham Nash, and Stephen Stills. So go ahead and put your hands up and we'll get going on questions.
Eileen, I have a question for you regarding the current state of what's happening at Fukushima, because with our news cycle tends to be so ADD in this country that they were on it all the time for 3 or 4 weeks, and now we hear virtually nothing about it. And I'm thinking it must still be leaking radiation. Do you know the exact status of what's happening there?
Actually, U.S. groups are, I think, doing a great job of tracking it. Unfortunately, TEPCO doesn't release enough information at all.
We don't hear anything on the news
yeah,
at all.
And it's, yes, but like Nuclear Information Resource Services and other organizations, Greenpeace here in the U.S., other places are monitoring it, and they have good information on the website, whatever's available. But unfortunately, we still have tremendous problems with information disclosure. But just last week, there was a spike. It's the highest that was reported since the accident. And so right now, it's an ongoing accident right now.
It's still leaking.
And the releases are like last week's spike was really huge. And that's releases from the plant. And so it's ongoing right now. And they say they're going to try to stabilize it by the end of the year, but that's not going to happen. And see, what I'm saying by ongoing is the releases are still happening, but also these spent fuel pools. I mean, some of them are really fragile now, and they're like propped up. And we're having earthquakes still. And so we still do not know what's going to be happening over the next months.
And also, they've been trying to cool the reactors with water. Thousands and thousands of tons of irradiated water. And they say that they're storing it. But where do you store thousands of tons of irradiated water? We know it's going into the ocean. We know that. There have been whales found 400 kilometers away from Fukushima that have irradiated flesh. We know where that water is going. It's still an ongoing accident. And no nuclear accident is local anymore. It's a global issue.
Massive amounts of radiation were released into the Pacific Ocean. And so what you're going to be seeing is that accumulation of the larger fish, just as you mentioned with the whales, but the larger fish, it was in the seaweed and now it's in the small fish and it's going to be accumulating. So you'll be seeing these levels go up in the larger fish. It's just massive amounts were released in the ocean.
There was a study done very recently. We published a website called nukefree.org, NUKEFRE.org, and we just published a study where a Japanese professor has estimated that more than 20 times more radiation has come from Fukushima than was released at Hiroshima. And we have 3 reactors that are continuing to melt. They are still in meltdown mode at Fukushima, and one spent fuel pool that is still out of control. So this is a very serious ongoing situation.
Yes, sir.
My name is Herman Travish. I'm with Green Tech Media. One of the things I've been following are the hearings that Barbara Boxer and other California representatives in particular have been holding in Washington, bringing representatives from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission before them. And what I hear is we're going to learn from this, we're going to make it safer. I'm just curious what you think, and if you think this kind of an event can maybe combat that type of public response.
Information is the best weapon. We need the information. We need the information out of Japan. We need the information. The NRC are not really dealing with it in a really truthful way. They're lowering the standards. They're changing the rules of what's going on with nuclear power plants. We're not getting the truth really from anyone.
And you can pretty much count on the fact that anything that goes on in Washington will be 90% posturing and posing and trying to grab camera time rather than you don't work there anymore. My friend. So even though they are holding hearings,
Do we need any more
we-
proof than recent events that public officials are dangerous and short-sighted and stupid?
Yeah.
I live in upstate New York, 40 miles downwind from the Indian Point complex, which has already leaked tritium and other radioisotopes into the Hudson River and into the groundwater, and which was a target of the 9/11 terrorists, by the way. They chose not to hit it, but it was sketched by one of the terrorists when he was casing the New York area for targets. And I just think that, you know, no terrorist in their right mind is going to blow up a solar panel or a 5-kilowatt can. So we need to go for decentralized, renewable, no emissions, and by the way, job-creating energy. All these, what Harvey mentioned, all the different kinds of renewables create several times the number of jobs per dollar spent as nuclear. And that's important to remember also.
John is obviously an exception to what I was talking about.
That's why he doesn't have a job there.
I'd like to interrupt for just 1 second and point out a couple of people. If you have questions about particular areas and regions of the country about what's happening with safe energy and the non-nuclear future movement, we have some real expert here. This is Michael May over here. Michael, if you just raise your hand. Michael Marriott, excuse me. And this is Tom Corbett. Tom works down in the southeastern part and He's with Friends of the Earth. And the nuclear reactors that they want to build there at VC Sumter and at Vocal are the only places where they're moving dirt right now. And I think that we have we have Rochelle, who's working on Diablo Canyon and San Onofre, and we have Mr. Williams back there who works on the Vermont Yankee situation, which will be the first nuclear power plant ever that has not received a relicense.
Let's go here on the end first.
There's a lot of talk on the Central Coast about Diablo Canyon after the Japan thing happened, and I know Jackson has history going back 30 years there with Diablo Canyon getting its original permits. There seemed to be about maybe 2 weeks of real hardcore energy that rose up there on the Central Coast about that, about the relicensing and all that, but it seems to dissipate. And I'm just wondering, for you guys who have been at this for so long, it's got to be a frustrating process for you. How do you keep the energy going? I mean, I'm astonished that you guys have been doing this for 3 decades, fighting this kind of fight with the amount of pushback.
I think once you understand the situation, you know that radiation is deadly to humans. Some of it is deadly for 280,000 years. So it's not a matter of, it's not really an issue that has to, it is current. It's always going to be current. We're always going to have to deal with the waste that we've already created. It's time to stop creating more of it. And you know, we're going to have to keep it away from the environment. But many of us who were activists 30 years ago thought that we'd sort of driven a stake through the heart of the nuclear industry 30 years ago. But not just us, really, 3 Mile Island and, you know, various really clear demonstrations of the problems, you know, involved and how, you know, and the safety. Plus the fact that it's never been able to pay for itself in the marketplace. It's funny that Wall Street always wants to, they look to Wall Street to build these things, but they'll only do it if they're identified against any kind of cleanup or any kind of, recompensing people for their health problems. They always downplay the health problems. But in fact, I mean, it's a really basket case industry. It cannot really survive on its own, unlike all the alternatives that all the clean and safe forms of energy that are coming to the fore now. So I mean, speaking for myself, I haven't been doing this for 30 years, but knowing what I know, I'm willing to jump back in the fight because I agree with Harvey Wasserman that this is a critical time and a turning point. And we have this clear example of Fukushima to illustrate the dangers and the imperative. I mean, as Eileen says, you know, I mean, until you looking out at your beautiful country and know that it's irradiated and that it's deadly, over a long period of time, we'll continue to, you know, I mean, until that happens to us, we'll continue to think of my fear is that we'll continue to put Fukushima over. That's on the other side of the Pacific. We always think that the ocean is infinite, but it's not infinite. It's filling up with plastic. It's filling up with our shit. And then now it's becoming irradiated. And I was angry 30 years ago because of the nuclear industry saying, well, give us a few years to we'll tabulate the health impact, you know. It infuriated me then and it infuriates me now because in 30 years they're the ones that have been working like termites in the night, you know, like trying to continue to erode health standards and governmental regulation. They're the ones that have unlimited resources to pay their people to try to shape the information and especially to try to shape public opinion. And but I think that people mistrust, and rightfully so mistrust, an industry that is based on us forgetting about the health, the dangers to our health. And it's also based on an imagined, I mean, that people imagine that nuclear is clean because they can't see the radiation. You know, so it might be cleaner than coal in terms of the particles of, you know, carbon in the air.
I would say if it were safe, they could buy insurance, right? If it were safe, they could buy insurance. It's the only industry in the history of this country where the American people have been the insurer. We are paying for the insurance for them. So you want a level playing field, then take away the indemnification, repeal Price-Anderson, and let them go buy insurance, and then I'll believe it's safe.
And the way that we keep our energy, you've got to look at it through the eyes of your children. I'm 70 years old. How much longer do I really have? Let's get real. But our children and our grandchildren, they're the ones that are going to suffer. That's how we keep the energy going.
And I was going to, let me add that although there haven't been any massive demonstrations in this country, you know, or accidents, I mean, we've been lucky. We've been really lucky, and part of that is because they haven't built any new plants in 30 years. What we can do besides draw attention and get you here and raise funds and raise an awareness is to support the incredible network of national and regional grassroots groups that are working in the communities to keep the information out and to go door to door. And that's kind of what we have been ongoing in our concerts for 30 years is along with the Indigo Girls and many other artists that have been donating to this cause, is supporting the regional groups so that they can continue their work. So that's one of the ways we can do it, is raise funds and raise awareness, get the information out. But I salute the regional groups who have really been in the trenches, and the national groups, and Michael Marriott with Mirrors and all the different incredible groups around the country, and you can read about them on nukefree.org, and they're also the largest group of consolidation of safe energy activists in one place is this weekend here in San Francisco at our Echo Fair. So, you know, thank goodness that there is some questioning of whether people can trust the information coming out of their government with BP, with Katrina, with the engineering building of the levees, with the response of BP, PG&E here in California. You know, people are going, hey, maybe there ought to be a little bit more transparency here, because these deals are being made, and the way things really, the way that these decisions are being made does not include the full range of information, and the American public deserves to have all sides of the nuclear issue presented in debate, and that's not what's happening. So that's why we're, once again, unfortunately, we have to use the tragedy that's happening in Japan to wake people up and keep it in the news, and that's one of the reasons we're doing it here between the anniversaries of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, is to remind people that they were all downwind. We are all downwind. This is our ocean. This is our Earth. There's no turning back. And the science is in on climate change, so let's just keep the debate and get the discussion back on the news.
Could I add a little bit about California? Actually, California has been acting, and there were several hundred people, probably close to 1,000 people who have so far written letters to the Energy Commission last week, who's looking at the cost, benefits, and risk of continuing to rely on our aging reactors on the coast. And our booth will have an alert letter and a smartphone letter that will go out tomorrow during the concert. So if you want to know what California is doing, our Energy Commission has been working on this. Our Coastal Commission has been working on this. Before Fukushima, they decided it's our economy, stupid, and we ought to be looking at it. And it's the economics that California can say to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, we don't care what you've decided to do. We're not operating this plant in California, either one of them. And so far, they've done a great job, and our congresspeople and our senators in California have done a great job. So I have to say that I'm pretty proud of the people in California, and I wish the rest of the country would listen.
Yes, John Addison, Clean Fleet Report. How have your concerns about nuclear risk inspired you to use more renewable energy, energy efficiency, and change what you drive in your own lives?
Well, I personally drive a biofuel car, and I have solar in both houses that I am lucky enough to own. I run all my houses on solar and sell back to the utility.
Oh, I've had a home that's been off the grid for 25 years, and I mean, in the beginning, it's in a rural area, and in the beginning, everybody had, you know, sheds of car batteries and wind generators, and really the technology has really advanced so rapidly and so profoundly that I mean,
I'd like to take this opportunity also to maybe have Alan talk a little bit about Vantage Point, because Tesla being one of his companies, he has some amazing renewable companies that he looks after. So maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the technology you have at Vantage Point.
Well, look, I think more relevantly, there's been a lot of progress since 1979, and I think the big change today is that we can address a lot of the issues and concerns about providing energy and clean water and non-toxic materials through advances in technology. 30 years ago, you couldn't make an electric car that was a practical instrument. Today you can, and the future is clear. Electric vehicles are cheaper to operate, they have zero emissions, they perform better, they have lower maintenance requirements. We can eliminate the need and addiction for oil completely in a move to electrification if we simply have the will. And companies like Tesla and others have demonstrated that it's doable. Right now in the desert, in the Mojave Desert, Bright Source Energy is building gigawatt quantities of clean, safe, reliable energy using mirror farms and solar capabilities. And we've got to bear in mind that we have already clean, inexpensive, safe nuclear power. It was developed a long time ago. It's conveniently located 93 million miles away. And we harness it. Great point. You know, more solar energy hits the Earth in a given day than the entire planet consumes in a year, if we only have the will to harness it. The technology is there. We have companies, and you'll see some of them here today, tomorrow, that are making renewable oils out of algae, that are developing new forms of wind turbines to harness the resources that we have. And we can do these now at scale. You know, the reason you can make an electric car, frankly, was courtesy of the cell phone and laptop computer industry who developed the lithium-ion batteries. We didn't have those 30 years ago. You couldn't make an LED light bulb 20 years ago. The blue LED hadn't been invented yet. Well, it now has been. You now can. And we have to bear in mind, when we're thinking about energy and resources in a growing, developing planet, which is going to put more and more demands on a finite group of resources, that we have to use our ingenuity and our intelligence to be able to come up with solutions that enable us to use less energy and create the energy and clean, affordable water that we need in intelligent, thoughtful, modernized ways. We have the capability. We're sitting in Silicon Valley, in the epicenter of innovation. Some of this is about galvanizing the will to realize that there are alternatives and that we need the political, the social will to get on with them.
And you get a free Tesla, and you get a free Tesla.
Quick question.
Please.
Are you happy with the pace that this is going? Because it seems like maybe not a lot has changed quick enough. And I know that we probably have the capability to make changes quicker, but you probably will also know we're not happy with the pace. But is it crawling to change, or can we do something more to speed up the change? Obviously, there's been changes in the last 35 years. Are you happy with the change in the pace, or the pace of the change rather? I know you guys are all.
We're dealing with inertia.
Yeah.
I would say,
We thought we could stop the Vietnam War in 10 years. It took us, in 1 year, it took us 10.
I would say we're all unhappy. We'd like it to go faster. But last year, for the first time, renewables generated more power, produced more gigawatts of power around the globe and in the U.S. than nuclear did. It was a milestone that passed unnoticed by many people. But solar, wind, geothermal, all the alternatives together passed nuclear last year. Meanwhile, nuclear is being subsidized and all the alternatives are not. So even with that disadvantage, they passed nuclear. So if we helped it, it would happen faster.
Because clearly it's a different world than it was 30 years ago, so there's been some progress made. But I know that a lot of people want to know, well, what can I do on a small level, on a personal level, to speed things up, to make the change happen? Because will the change happen quick enough before it really becomes a crisis?
Well, I think that's where public perception, that's where public perception is a really very big factor. We want to try to popularize the idea that you have in your own hands, the capability to make a change that makes a difference. The perception that, it's not here yet, or like, I can't afford to try this. We have to, that's part of the battle for us, because, and that's why I did the solar project at my house. I drive a Volt, and it really, although it has a gas backup system, I've only used like 8 gallons of gas in 2,000 miles. And, it's very doable. But at the same time, Chevrolet's selling these other cars that are like far from that ideal. So I think as long as they can sell people stuff that they don't need, people will, as long as people will buy it, they'll sell it to you. So I think the public perception, and that's why an event like this is so important. We have an energy fair. We have a sort of people can come to hear music, but they can also familiarize themselves with some of the innovations that are available to them in their lives.
We do have one specific political item that's very important to turning the corner, which is the loan guarantee program. The Bush administration asked for $50 billion in new loan guarantees to build new nuclear plants. And this group got together in the form of nukefree.org, and we collectively worked with our grassroots organizations around the country and managed to stop that from going through. The Obama administration has proposed another $36 billion in loan guarantees, and we are very specifically focused on stopping any new loan guarantees from going through the Congress. And we believe that if these loan guarantees are turned around again, that this also will be a major turning point that will prevent the construction of new nuclear plants in this country. So this is a very key agenda item that we're focused on.
What do you think about one quick thing? I have a solar system at my house down by the beach, a little 1950s tract home, 3-bedroom, 1-bath, hardwood floor, fireplace. My electric bill was $1.65.
Yeah.
But the secret to the question about what can you do is in conservation. Waste not, want not. The quickest net energy gain that we can have is conservation. People need to use less, they need to be more conscious of it, the simple things of turning off your light bulbs, et cetera, et cetera. That's the biggest change that we can make.
Buy LEDs.
Yes, sir.
I just want to come back to this question. I agree with you about conservation. As a matter of fact, people in the Sierra Club are talking about the fact that $2 to $4 you save from conservation can be invested in renewables, so it's a double win. But Hardy, you said something about this fight with the Obama administration about the loan guarantees. It's been proposed that giving some of the money, and $30 billion, considering what our budget is these days, is not a lot of money, to the nuclear industry to give it an opportunity to hang itself, hoist itself on its own petard is the phrase that's been proposed. I just wonder if you have any ideas about that. In other words, give them some money, let them try and build and run into the kind of problems that they're finding out down south that they can't afford to build. What do you think about that?
Well, the problem is the Fukushima factor. Any nuclear plant has the capability, and especially, by the way, here in California, this is a national event, but many of you are Californians, the only 4 reactors in the country that are on earthquake faults as well as being in tsunami zones are in California. 2 at San Luis Obispo, the 2 at Diablo Canyon. And Jackson mentioned, this idea that the sea is infinitely large. If the earthquake that caused Fukushima occurred over 100 kilometers away from Fukushima, if we had had that 9.0 earthquake here within a mile of Diablo or San Onofre, I don't even want to describe the consequences. I think you're all well aware. And so, no, any reactor that goes through is a potential Fukushima, Chernobyl, or 3 Mile Island, and we don't want that to happen.
Well, I just want to echo, I mean, people in Fukushima talk about Diablo Canyon and San Onofre. We talk about it, and we worry about it. We worry about it. I mean, it's really real right here in California. It's very scary. I just want to tell you that.
I worry that you don't see any ongoing coverage about the cleanup energies in Fukushima, you know, and that you have to turn on the NHK network to get any kind of sense of how ongoing and how long a process it's going to be, and how many lives have been affected. I think that in so many ways our culture is one of people being incredibly distracted by their own particular ambitions and their own particular fortunes, and I think it's really anything that an event like this can do to help focus, you know, attention on our, you know, our connection, our interdependence with the rest of the world is a good thing for Americans.
You mentioned perception of what's actually happening out there in the world. Aren't we battling perception management?
Yes.
Yes.
And how can we battle perception management?
We have to stop worrying about Kim Kardashian's ass. We have to stop thinking about Lindsay Lohan. We have to start getting real news. The Chernobyl Union in Ukraine, which is a non-governmental agency, just brought out a fact that 734,000 people died as a result of Chernobyl. When did you ever hear anything about it in today's media? We all know that today's media owners, you could probably count on 2 hands. They don't want this information out there. They just want you to be sheep. Lie down, buy another pair of sneakers, buy a soft drink, and shut the fuck up while we rob you. That's what's going on.
Amen.
Amen. Well, with that in mind, do all of you feel, because you've spoken about acting locally, and yet from the top, which is the White House, do we really see leadership? Last summer we had the biggest oil spill we've just about ever seen. The president went down there twice. Would that not have been his occasion to do the John F. Kennedy speech, where we're going to get off oil in 20 or 30 or 40 years? Do you feel that there's been leadership, any or all of you, from the top down?
I say Ed Markey's doing a great
Because
job.
he can frame the argument. Even if he doesn't do anything else, he can frame the argument. And I haven't heard him do it yet.
I frame it in a song, actually. That's what we all do, is write songs and sing them. And I have a song that says, there are many ways to boil water, and you chose the stupidest one. You know, really all a reactor does is boil water to spin a turbine and send electrons on the grid. And there's so many other ways to do that that do not involve creating a substance that, as Jackson said, we have to safeguard from the environment for 240,000 years. King Tut was 7,000 years ago. I mean, we thought that was a long time ago. We're creating something that has to be guarded infinitely for our practical purposes. And we shouldn't do that before we know how we're going to take care of it. It's totally irresponsible, and we're being presented with a false choice. The industry is saying, look, we got climate change. We obviously do. We all know the weather is screwed up. Terrible climatic extremes and events. We're being said, look, you either got fossil fuels or nuclear. That's a lie. We have a palette of all kinds of renewables that are available today and affordable today and that work today that are not being invested in, not being funded by our government and by our corporations. And we're saying it's time to do it. And as consumers, it's time to make the choice with our own dollars, to vote with our dollars for the right thing.
To help keep this in the news, will similar shows be staged in other cities?
Yeah, we've been talking about it. We realize that the accident at Fukushima is an incredible focus point and an opportunity, unfortunately, to be able to spread more awareness and regenerate the energy that we had 30 odd years ago.
We also think it really matters to come to a specific region and involve people who live in that area in the shows, not only musicians, but industry people and industry and activists from those areas. So there are plans, there are nothing that we would announce today, but there are plans to do
And
that.
the idea, of course, is to get younger bands in this. You know, that's why it's so great that Jason Mraz immediately wanted to help. Jonathan Wilson immediately wanted to help. You know, we need fresh blood to keep this going, because like I said before, with all due respect, we are getting older. You know, we need new artists to become dedicated for this.
And with our petition in 2007, when we stopped the $50 billion bailout of the energy bill of the nuclear industry, you can go on Nuke Free and read. There was a tremendous upsurge of interest and by younger bands, and a lot of them we asked, and they really wanted to be here, and they just were unavailable. They're already on tour. So we fully believe that not only cutting across musical genres and generational genres, but cultural genres. I mean, this is an energy dependence in the economy and the mess we're in the Middle East. On every level, this is a solution that is a win situation that should cut across party lines. There's no kidding around here. We're all breathing this stuff, and we have a right to live healthy lives and leave the earth healthy for the animals and our children.
I thought it was incredible with that official at TEPCO when he said about Fukushima that the Japanese people don't have the right to a non-radiated life. Can you imagine saying that?
On the other hand, there are encouraging things. Germany has made an incredibly sane decision. Didn't the Italians have a referendum?
Italy, Portugal,
Turned
Israel,
it down.
Switzerland, Sweden.
We're seeing a possible tipping point because people cannot not understand what happened at Fukushima. Anybody that can read and think cannot not know what happened.
We're used to thinking of ourselves as sort of on the cutting edge and on the forefront of innovation in industry and technology, but in fact we're way behind in alternative energies because of the collusion between government policy and an industry that can't pay for itself. Norway, quietly, besides having all this oil in the North Sea, Norway has a myriad projects involving the tides, and with all their fjords, they have ways of turning turbines by simply the tidal action. I think Israel's got a project in the middle of the Mojave or in Nevada or something. I mean, there are companies, global companies out there that are taking the fore in these industries, and
the people that are investing money now, they're getting smart. They're not investing in nukes. They're investing in alternative energies. They know what's coming. They see the future. They can make money purely on an economical level. If you're not caring about your children or the state of the planet or the environment, if you don't give a shit about that and you only care about making money, you will put your money into solar and renewable energy.
Thank you.
We're going to wrap it up in just a second. I just wanted to take the opportunity to introduce Jason Mraz, who's joined us. And of course, we were talking about the younger generation. We're also lucky enough to have Tom Morello with us tomorrow and Sweet Honey in the Rock, who couldn't be here. I just wanted to take a quick opportunity because Kitaro is going to be joining us and playing tomorrow, and maybe both you and Eileen can talk about this. But sort of what is the state of sort of the emotional state of the people of Japan right now?
Well, I like to say one thing is on behalf of the people of Japan, that we like to say thank you for the support and relief of the Japanese people and Japan. It was great, but it's unfortunately people send money to Japan Red Cross, but they're not gonna give them money. Still, they stuck in a bank. Every day is really. Every day is maybe some.
The money is not getting to the people?
No, not yet.
Huge amounts.
Why not?
That's and also the people couldn't get any truth.
Right. Well, they don't.
How
want
much
truth.
the radiation is going on.
Right.
So I was sending the many emails to all our informations, and then still people surprised. Oh, really? That's the people living in Japan is still like a kind of a blind. They couldn't hear. And then the one thing is, last month I back to Japan and I tried to talk to the people about how much the radiation is going on. It's not contained. It seems like getting worse.
Yes.
And but as people seems don't want to talk. Seems like I'm not on the page.
Right. The
Seems
perception gap. As you were
yeah,
saying
it's
before.
like I'd like to have, focus more our ages, maybe another 20 years, hopefully 30 years, but as younger kids has 60 years, 70 years, and I became a grandpa now, so it's. I think everybody have to
children, sure.
focus your children's. That's only our missions.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
What he just said is just right on the mark. And when you are completely contaminated and you're not told information, there's just incredible strain. Families are being split up. School teachers, if they mention radiation to the children, they're called in and absolutely lambasted and reprimanded by their school principal. All that horrible stuff is happening. There's just tremendous divorces because the father wants to force the family to stay on and the mother leaves with the kids. That kind of thing happening. But I think the key word is mothers, because even the Tokyo mothers have stood up, gathered zillions of petitions, found contamination in Tokyo, confronted the local government, and of course that's happening in Fukushima too. So it's people like that that are really pushing it forward.
Well, right at the heart of what I'm hearing from you is this potential for collusion between government and industry, and a face saving. We say, oh, the Japanese have the extreme sense of saving face, and for that reason they're not allowing information. They don't want to admit the extent of the damage. But we have that in our own country, and we have it. And as one of the writers on nukefree.org pointed out, the nuclear industry is a culture of secrecy, is one of managing the information, managing perceptions, managing to control the perceptions about the dangers, and it's an industry in which human frailty, the human frailties of personal ambition, of greed, and of fear, rule just like they rule any place else. We're no different than the Japanese, and even if we look a little different, or it takes a slightly different form, we have those same things going on in the industry. Their plants were sold to them by us. We have the same design plants here, and the same interest on the part of the industry at sweeping the problems under the rug.
Would you please talk about the exposure of the people around the world from the fallout, and particularly along the West Coast?
I was speaking with a lady who writes for USA Today 2 days ago. She lives in Oregon. She said, I don't know what to think. This problem is in my front door. My children are drinking milk that has a much higher degree of radiation detectable in it here in Oregon.
Even as far as Virginia, they have found the grass to be irradiated.
The plume from Chernobyl, I believe, I'm not sure, but I think it went around the Earth 2.5 times.
Vermont has radioactive rain, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Montpelier, Vermont, over the 4th of July weekend when my wife and I were in the Adirondack Mountains. I read in the Montpelier paper that they were measuring 66% of the EPA's allowable limits of cesium in rainwater. And we all know that those allowable limits are actually too high. There is no safe limit. In fact, if you look up the Petkau effect, P-E-T-K-A-U, do a search on any search engine for it. Petkau effect is studied by a UC Berkeley professor that shows the damage is actually worse from low-level radiation over a long period of time than it is from high-level exposure for a short period of time. And that's what we're all getting from Fukushima, what we did get and are still getting from Chernobyl, and what we hope to forestall and not get from future accidents by putting together this event.
What Graham said very clearly is absolutely the truth. Any nuclear accident, anywhere, is a worldwide accident.
I just want to add, the reason you're getting it here is the bulk of the radiation that left those plants in Fukushima didn't go inland, it went out to the Pacific Ocean, into the air and the water. And what's happening with California, the bulk of it will not go out to the Pacific Ocean, it will come inland. So you get what we mean by that's really dangerous.
Take a look at the jet stream.
Jonathan and Jason, you're newer members to this. I'm curious how you got involved and what was the reason you wanted to get involved, both of you.
Well, I got an easy invitation. I was immediate yes. And for my own selfish reasons, I love going outside. I love going to the ocean. And in the last year, I visited the Gulf of Mexico and got to see the spill down there. And I honestly thought I was going down there to help fish out oil with buckets. And there was no one to be found, and found that the coast was being policed by BP and that there was nothing really I could do. And then, of course, seeing what happened in Japan, I live only 20 miles from the San Onofre power station. I live in Oceanside, California. And I said, you know, if an earthquake and or a tidal wave hit my area, which it can, and this thing were to happen, does that mean I would have to move? Would our whole way of life change? And so things like this come up. I'm an easy yes. I want to get on board and continue to be an advocate for green energy, safe energy. In fact, I do a little thing in my own neighborhood, which I encourage other people to do, is if you have a technology, whether you're catching rainwater or you're using solar, invite your neighbors over and celebrate that technology and show them how it works, show them how much energy you're saving, show them the energy that you're creating. And in doing so, I'm turning on my neighbors. And so where we're an agricultural district, we've been harvesting avocados for years. Now I'm hoping our neighbors, we can all be harvesting our own energy and hopefully someday reverse what San Onofre has to do for our region. So this is a concert for my own selfish reasons.
And then me, I would like to add that, just like to echo what was talked about, like from John, is that, you know, the thing that all of us do is like the perfect, you know, like the song, like is the perfect sort of vehicle, like for change and for, you know, and so.
Getting information out.
Yeah, and, you know, like in it sticks around like the song does, and so.
Getting back to Jackson, you had mentioned having to do with the way information gets out and information that's not necessarily getting out there. Do you think that there have been radioactive releases that have happened in the U.S. or around the world that people don't know about, whether it's routine release or an accident?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just about 10 years ago received a document from England, from the United Kingdom, right, documenting 4,000 nuclear accidents that you never heard anything about. In one particular case, they were getting a leak from this pipe, and you know how they stopped it? They put a basketball in there. Yes,
but there
have been, even in John State, you know, we're talking Vermont Yankee. I mean, apart from the cooling tower falling down,
but the by itself,
has been releasing cesium and strontium into the water table.
And there was a huge uproar last year in Great Britain about the nuclear fleet, which was being kept in Scotland, I believe, and there was an incredible amount of leakage, and there was just and of course these things are swept under the rug and kept, you know.
Do you know how many times
secret.
the Russians spilled and didn't say anything to anybody? Would you like to guess? Could you count that high?
It's the same all over the world. We're not pointing out anybody. This is a worldwide problem. It really, truly is. And you guys are helping us get the information out there, and I want to thank you all for that.
I want to
Somebody wants to learn more, where can they go?
Nukefree.org has a lot of information. We're basically a clearinghouse for great articles that are under the radar, history, information, busting myths about what's, why nuclear is not, the Renaissance is a fallacy, all of the actual information about ethanol and what could be a healthier version of them than the way that we're getting it from soy and corn. A lot of that information you can get on nukefree.org, Nuclear Information Resource Service.
Yeah.
There's all these groups that are represented, I think 23 today. There's a fantastic amount of information available, but nukefree.org is a good place to start to learn which those groups are.
Jackson, you were going to say one other thing?
I was just going to reiterate what Jonathan was saying about the power of song. We're musicians, and so we've found that it's within our capabilities to talk about this. John's written songs about it, but to talk about the environment, but also, especially to express. Jonathan's got an album he's probably the least known musician here today, but is
Gentle Spirit?
Yeah, his new album is being written about in England, and he's sort of a standard bearer for a kind of musical values that we have in great profusion here amongst us. And what his songs are about really are about the natural world and about the beauty of the natural world. And it's interesting to come from a generation that talked about all this stuff really freely, and having had sort of a period of time in which people don't sing about it all that much, and to see a sort of renaissance of that concern in Jonathan's music and in Jason's. And I really think that music has a way has a way of carrying our deepest concerns, not only for the environment but for our families. And so we're happy to be a vehicle, by which this information can be brought to people, and not only in the songs but in the village, the eco village that we're presenting with this concert. And we look forward to try to making concerts like this happen in other parts of the country as well.
If you listen to the songs we sing in this concert, you will see the best communicating that we can do about it, much better than when we talk. You will hear it over and over again.